One sec. Fabulous. All right, you heard the announcement. All right, so welcome to the Downtown Worcester Square Management Team on Tuesday, August 17th. It's 6:03 p.m. and I'm calling this meeting to order. Thanks everybody for showing up tonight. We're going to run through our normal agenda tonight, but I'd like to make an announcement that we are in kind of analyzing the order of our agenda and seeing if this is the best way to move through the process or not. I encourage folks who can on the first Thursday of the month to attend to the Fairhaven management team. We kind of have a different way of compartmentalizing their meeting where they kind of have like public safety issues and then like neighborhood issues, and they've kind of broken the meeting down into like what topic we're talking about, which I like. It's kind of so it kind of keeps a little bit more of a interactive meeting because we're all focused on one agenda item for a while, which I do. It's interesting. But tonight we're going to follow our old agenda, our established process. Greg has a great idea, which he's DM'd me, so nobody else has seen that, so I'm going to announce it. I would love if folks, we have a small enough group right now, that if you introduce yourself in the chat, so put your name, either where you work or where you live. So we can kind of build a little. Here's the thing: when we were in person, we used to go around the room, and we'd actually build a little community that way. But it's a lot harder on Zoom. So I'm Ian Dunn. I live on Brown Street, and I'm going to type that in the chat. I encourage everybody else to do the same. I also work downtown. And while that's happening, I'll hand this over to our lieutenant, our district manager, Lieutenant Marr.
Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, Sean Marr, Downtown Worcester Square District Manager. Just some monthly updates that have been going on in the district. We have seen an increase over last year's numbers in motor vehicle thefts and larcenies from motor vehicles. They were down last year because there were fewer cars parked on the street where the crimes of opportunity to steal things out of them was reduced. However, they are increasing this year. The commonality is really expensive items being left in plain view in cars. The vast majority of those are unlocked. That's been sort of the trend, citywide for quite some time. It's very hard to stop a $4,000 laptop being left on the front seat in an unlocked motor vehicle being taken. It's just, we have to catch them in the act, and it's very hard. So, as I said before, please remind yourselves and your neighbors to make sure that those items aren't being left out in plain view. Working through the district, we have seen some disturbances around the bar detail, where we've had some large-scale fights, 20 or 30 people exiting some of our nightlife and getting into physical altercations in the street. Because of COVID last year, we did not have a bar detail, obviously, because the restaurants were closed and the bars were closed. We brought it back originally with 2 officers to maintain visible presence, specifically around that type of disturbances. But because it's been increasing, the chief has approved that going to 4 officers, and we have been able to fill that the past several weeks. And patrol officers have responded to make sure that we quell these disturbances quickly. We've also done some noise decibel readings over on Orange Street. We've had some complaints about the loud music coming from the street closure, and we've done some tests there to find that it is not egregiously above our noise ordinance. However, we are working with the organizers to make sure that as we move forward with these street closures, that the noise is kept at a level in which is inviting for positive activation, however, not a disturbance toward the residents there. Other than that, the district, we are working on different things to make sure that the quality of life is maintained. Our narcotics unit has been out downtown to some of our hotspots where we've seen really increases in disruptive behavior and narcotic sales, where residents aren't able to walk in and out of their buildings, which is problematic. So we are, of course, working with our social service partners to do outreach on both addiction services, homeless outreach, as well as mental health services, and we will continue to do that in addition to police presence. Other than that, I will open it up to the floor to any questions or concerns from anyone who has anything for me.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions, anybody? All right, well, seeing none, and I think Lieutenant Marl usually hangs out for the whole meeting, so if you have anything, chime back in later. But we'll go over to Steve Ham with the CRB report. Thank you.
Just to interrupt, I probably won't be hanging out for the meeting today. I have something to do with my wife a little later. So if you have anything, either text me, email me, or ask right away. Sorry about that.
No problem. I totally understand it. Sorry about that. All right. So for folks, his email is s.mar@newhavenct.gov. I mean, you can get in touch with me. I'm happy to pass that along as well. All right. Mr. Ham.
So the CRB is finally investigating some complaints that didn't seem to be resolved in ways that members of the board were comfortable with. We're looking, I think, most notably at a couple of complaints of excessive force that occurred on the same day involving the same officer. And these were arrests at Walmart when the officer was on extra duty, which also raises questions about kind of the status of police officers as extra duty. That kind of, if they're hired by Walmart almost to be security guards, yet they're acting as public police officers. And I think there was a new policy that went out on this, but haven't had a chance to look at it. But it just seems a little problematic to me. Also, we found that in the initial several cases, it's difficult to get in touch with the complainants. They just don't respond to phones or emails. Maybe they're just done with it, who knows? But that makes it a little bit more difficult to investigate. We've decided that we're going to investigate even if we don't have a complainant saying, please take it further, but it's an impediment. So the group is working through that. A couple of additional things. We've asked the PD for some additional training, mainly concerning use of force, de-escalation, bias, and also some of the recruiting policies. We want to understand them better, both how they are, what they're doing to filter out people who might be violent or racists, and also how do they reach out to people who are truly of the community. We're taking an online class about implicit bias. This is for ourselves, how to recognize it in ourselves and others, and that's on Thursday. Just really quickly, I do want to mention something else that's coming up. Opioid Overdose Awareness Day on the New Haven Green. This is August 31st from noon to 6. Going to be a lot of activities on the green, a lot of efforts to engage. And the film that Scott Amore and I made, Fentanyl Madness, about opioids, is going to be playing on a loop in one of the tents. And the theme of our film is that most of what people think they know about opioids is in fact wrong, and that has fatal consequences. And I don't know if you guys heard, but the street outreach people, the street medical people, part of their team was a guy named Jason, who was a lived experience guy dealing with addiction. He died of a fentanyl overdose about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And this has been a shattering event and experience for many people out on the street who say, if Jason can't handle it, how can we be strong enough to handle this? So within our homeless community, where there's a lot of addiction and obviously much broader than that, there is a grief and fear. More people died among the homeless from overdose in the past year than died from COVID. And I think it's important to remember that that's going to be we're going to have an opioid crisis even after the COVID crisis is over. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Steve. That was sobering news. It was tough to see that. Lana?
Hey Steve, can you remind us how people can get in touch with the review board to have cases reviewed, and who can do that? Can you submit that even if you're not involved in the case, but you think it's something that's worth review? Can you just run us through how that works?
Yes. All of that is true. If someone has been the victim or has, feels that they've experienced, excessive force or disrespect or dereliction of duty, or there's a whole variety of things, they can get in touch with the Civilian Review Board, and the information is on the city government website. Just a quick search there will get an email or a phone number. And in addition, if someone witnesses something that they want to bring to the attention of the board, that is also welcome. So yeah. One of those complaints at Walmart, I think, was submitted by someone who was a witness rather than the person who was arrested.
I see Abby and then Tony.
Thanks, and Steve, thanks both for kind of your efforts on education on the opioid situation. As Ian said, really tragic, and for on the Civilian Review Board, I have one question. I'm curious what the time, your statement about having it be hard to reach complainants. What is the time frame between when people have filed their complaints and then when they come to you when you're trying to circle back to them?
When I think about the complaints we've looked at so far, which has been several dozen, typically it's about 2 months for the Internal Affairs to complete their investigation and turn their recommendation and report over to the chief and to us. However, there are some that have gone on for much longer. I can't remember, you remember the incident where the man who was a tenant at Church Street in the financial center building was being, removed from the building? That has still not shown up as a finished thing. And I don't believe that he filed a complaint, but the chief at the time, Reyes, asked for an investigation. So why that hasn't been finished, we've asked about it a couple of times, but it's possible. I mean, one of the biggest problems that we have and that the Internal Affairs has is the people don't necessarily want to engage with them. So that may be what it is. That man, didn't file the complaint. That already signals something. We don't know exactly what. But yeah, I would say anywhere from 6 months to 2 months is typical. The lieutenant has 4 sergeants who report to him. And they do these, each of the complaints is assigned to a sergeant who's been a detective, been in the detective bureau, has those kinds of skills. But they're also working on all sorts of things. Like they review, all the information about candidates for the police academy, things like that. There's a lot of other stuff they do. So it's not just these investigations. And there was some problems with some of those reviews in the past. I don't know if you remember, some of the clerical people didn't make the phone calls, but said they did to the people who were, supposed to be speaking up for these people. So anyway, it's something that I think now police officers are doing more than clerical people. So that's another demand on them. But that's not to say they should be, it's okay that it takes 2 months. 2 months sounds like a long time to me. And 6 months definitely sounds like a long time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Roth. Tony? Tony, you're on mute.
This is, thank you. This is either for Steve or Lieutenant Meyer. Just out of curiosity, what is the percentage of the police force that are actual residents of New Haven?
I don't know.
The actual percentage, I do not know, but I know there are several officers that do live within the city and out of the city. I don't know the actual percentages.
I actually could send that to Ian. That's in our budget report. It's in the monthly budget report for both police and fire. So I don't remember what it is offhand, but can send that to Ian as a follow-up.
Thank you, Alder Roth.
Or I'll just look it up now and put it in the chat.
Yeah, I see Alder Sabin is reporting about 30%. So between the,
So on the ball.
We got them all here. But if you do get that hard number, I would be happy to share it in the minutes as well.
Thank you, Abby.
All right, so I see a couple questions in the chat. I'll remind the chat is a difficult place to conduct business for folks who dial in on the phone. So if you wouldn't mind coming off mute to ask your question in the meeting, that would be great. Any other questions for Steve Ham or PD?
Steve, I just wrote in the chat, are civilian review complaint forms available at public libraries? I'd also add, are they available at high schools, at City Hall, public places? If not, please send me a PDF and I can help facilitate that.
They're available at the library branches and at City Hall. And they may be available beyond that, but I'm not remembering the details. But I could ask and report back.
They're also available at the city website, so you can go online and file the complaint online.
Yeah, that's the other place.
Thank you, Lieutenant and Mr. Marr, for that. Are there any further questions for CRB or PD? Seeing none, I think we'll have quite a robust report tonight from our LCI specialist, Arthur Natalino Jr.
Thank you, Ann. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to thank you all for a warm welcome last month, and I will be brief with my report because I know we have other agenda items. So to start, I don't know if anybody has noticed that there was a lot of graffiti in the neighborhood, especially in the areas of the underpass of Grand Avenue and Chapel Street. So I was able to collaborate with some of my coworkers and also reach out to the appropriate departments to get a lot of that graffiti removed, and also a lot of overgrowth in the area to be cut and cleaned also. So I will continue to follow up on that. But also there was some other businesses and properties that had some graffiti issues further down Grand Avenue. I was able to reach out to them, and they did a really good job with painting over that and addressing those issues. So a lot of graffiti that was displayed on Grand Avenue has been addressed, and I will continue to monitor, but it definitely has shown improvement. And also I had to leave some door knockers in some of the areas of St. John Street, William Street, Brown Street, and Chapel throughout the month because of cases of illegal dumping, bulk trash. Also, I'm trying to develop a routine of displaying some really good curb appeal with the tree belts, because some of the overgrowth was completely out of control, I noticed. So I left some door knockers, but also it was a good strategy that I used prior with my work here at LCI with building relationships in the neighborhood, but also getting a contact. So this way here, I could just call them just in case if additional work needed to be done. But also it's a good strategy to just educate tenants and landlords of how some of the city ordinances work. So I followed up on some other overgrowth on Bradley and St. John connectors. So those are on rotation, but like I said, I just wanted to monitor that they weren't getting held behind. What else here? Yeah, there was that big lot on Grand Avenue that had a lot of overgrowth and a lot of trash was starting to build up again. I was able to reach out to both owners to have all that cleaned up. I followed up on some private property issues on C-Click Fix. So just so that everything's updated. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. But also, I'm gonna try to get some of the graffiti and overgrowth and illegal dumping issues I notice are a really big hassle on Union Street when you come off Water. I'm gonna try to see who the appropriate department is to see if I could get all that cleaned up, because I know that the state DOT is another contact, but also, you know, there's some bridge units, road units. So I'm following up on that. So I definitely keep people in posted throughout when I hear back from them. But yeah, other than that, you know, like I said, I'm following up a couple of notice of violations I sent out recently. I got one on Chapel. I sent another one with St. John. But you know, like I said, I just want to make sure that sidewalks, private property issues continue to be addressed in my travels. And you know, I know that I've only been here a little over a month, but I'm starting to build my network here, and I look forward to addressing issues and doing anti-blight enforcement appropriately while establishing a good network with this community. Also, the ambassadors program was a great success. They went all throughout the downtown Worcester area. It ended last week, actually. It was a very, very good program, and I'm very excited that it was a a great benefit to the city citywide, all the districts. You know, the supervisors were great, the kids were great. They they did a lot of activities with Public Works, the fire department, LCI, parks, and definitely look forward to doing that. Similar projects going forward, especially in the fall with other cleanups, especially with like leaves falling from the trees, but also trash. So the ambassador program was a great success, and I'm happy whoever was involved with that was on board and made that a great success. And that's pretty much all I have. And if anybody has questions, I'm here.
Thank you. I see a couple of questions. Steve Ham, Sarah Greenblatt, Answers Farwell in that order, and then Tony Kozlowski.
So Arthur, question for you. Under the building code, if somebody leaves like a derelict cars on their property, is that a violation of the building code? And the follow-up, if somebody just piles brush on their property next to somebody else's property, is that considered trash? Is that a violation of the building code?
So I'm sorry, do you mean by like a vehicle that's like
Just like up on blocks and covered with bird, poop and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would have to look, but I think that would be considered a possible unauthorized storage issue. And depending on, I would have to look at it, but also piling up of debris and stuff is definitely also something I could address through anti-blight. I would like to see it. I would like to have a visual to give you a better answer. But in regards to that, yeah, the debris and built up accumulation of unauthorized storage is definitely something I could look into. Also housing code too, but if it's like a bigger thing with vehicles and stuff like that, that might be a zoning thing, but also it's something I might be able to address. So if it's something that I could look into and give you a better understanding with the visual, that would definitely be more of a better resource for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and before I answer any other questions, so the all the graffiti, I just wanted to mention that I just wanted to bring this to the attention of the management team. And if the management team in the neighborhood and the community are open to ideas for murals, and like I said, I just wanted to bring it to the community first before any other ideas go forward. The community is always the number one people that you, me personally, you bring to the roundtable before other ideas go forward. I just wanted to see if anybody had thought it was a good idea, because all this graffiti, now that it's being addressed, I didn't know if anybody had ideas of maybe putting murals of these areas that keep attracting all this activity. So I've been talking to some staff, and I wanted to see what the management team community would think about maybe possibly bringing up mural ideas. Just an idea right now. Maybe you guys as a community talk about it, maybe develop some ideas, and then we bring it to the department for approval, if that's something that you guys would be willing to do. So I just wanted to throw it out there, because I'd hate to see graffiti removed, and all of a sudden we get back into the same, clean it, fix it, clean it. So I'm just trying to think of a long-term strategy to address some of this graffiti, because it's such a great area that would, I think the potential would be great. So, you guys talk about it. It's just an idea I wanted to throw out there with these underpasses, and also possibly over there on Union, just the big hotspot areas of graffiti. I just wanted to bring that out there. So you guys discuss with the management team, and you let me know, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Merlino.
And I have other questions, so.
Yeah, no, I see a couple. Just on the mural project, because I think this is a very interesting idea, and one that is working in a lot of places. I know that there has been some conversation in our neighborhood over the past several years about murals on Chapel Street under that underpass. So make sure that we, if folks aren't here tonight that are involved in that, let them know there's interest, and let's get them into the meeting. Ms. Greenblatt.
Yes, Arthur, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm with the Worcester Square Watch. And I think I put you on our list when I heard you were becoming our new LCI representative. And I just wanted to say, yes, I think there's been interest in looking at murals for the underpass on Chapel at Hamilton, and between Hamilton and Franklin, I think it is. But and I also wanted to bring to your attention that the Metropolitan Business Academy School, right behind at the end on Water Street, has had an HVAC system that's been extremely loud over the past few weeks. Something's not working, and we have a lot of our neighbors have been talking with the school personnel there, and some of the maintenance folks have been on vacation, but it is getting louder. And I wanted to just bring it to your attention. I know that there's people here at the end of Warren Street at the Columbus Mall have been in communication, but I thought maybe you might want to know about it too, because it's really loud. And I wanted to just bring that to your attention. But I look forward to working with you and having a chance to talk about some of the neighborhood issues that we've been hearing from neighbors about.
Oh, absolutely. Whatever I could do. Two things. What's the name of that school again?
The Metropolitan Business Academy.
Oh, on Water Street. Okay. Yeah.
Water Street.
Okay. That's a high school, right?
Yeah, it's a high school.
Okay.
And it's just really, there's something wrong with that HVAC system, and the people have been on vacation, and it needs attention.
And
we have an outside contractor that works on it, but the right people haven't been able to get in touch.
Is the noise coming like during more of the morning or the afternoon hours?
All day.
So it's all day. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let me see if I could contact the Board of Ed over there to see if I could get some updates on that. And
I just wanted to tell you, I met some of the ambassadors this summer, a couple weeks ago, on Worcester Street, and cleaning up areas that around Russo Park that hadn't been cleaned up for a while. So it was great to see them. And
yeah,
great. I think Frank was with them that day. I had a chance to meet him too. So.
Yeah, no, it was a great program. I'm so happy they were able to assist in the neighborhood citywide.
Yeah, it was just great to see kids involved like that. So
yeah, it was really good. So I look forward to working with them in the future. Great. So
I'll be in touch.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks, Sarah. Answers?
To follow up on Sarah's comment about the Business Academy, I don't know if any students are using it at all in the summer, but during the time of its construction, there was a big debate about even building it there because it's so close to the highway and the pollution levels are so high. And there was a air quality analyst that came and said that the only way to put the building there and have it somewhat safe was to have it completely sealed with air purifiers. and to not allow the students to ever play basketball out in the parking lot, things like that. So the other question, in addition to the noise for the nearby neighbors, is it functioning well enough so that people that are inside are actually safe? So that would be related. If it seems to be falling out of service, it could be dangerous for people inside the building too. And then I'm wondering, maybe we could start a list of the locations for possible murals, because I think each one will have a slightly different solution. For instance, there's money that was part of some of the funding that created Mill River Crossing, the former Farnham Court complex, still under construction. I can't remember the amount, but it was a very significant amount of money that was part of their grants that was to do the mural, the underpass at Grand Avenue. And the Housing Authority decided that they really couldn't administer or manage that project and transferred the money to the either the parking authority or traffic and parking. And so there's money sitting somewhere in an account for that particular project. And it just needs to have people kind of get gathered together. And the whole idea is to unite those two sides of Grand Avenue through an art project. And if we could find out about where that money is and be reminded about how much it is, that's one. And then I agree with you, there's a lot of places that, you create beauty and interest, and people love that and they don't bother to pull out their spray can. By the way, you're going to probably read about it in the paper soon. Walking past the fire department yesterday on Artisan Street, where the fire department parking lot driveway is, if you look at the concrete and glass brick wall right there, look closely, someone came up with the most strange and charming small work of art, a sculpture of a baby hanging on the edge of the concrete as if it's trying to peek through the glass and watch the trains. And it's like a little Banksy, someone just did this beautiful, surprising, subtle, sneaky little thing. And it's so funny. And oh, there it is. Yeah, we went over there last night. Isn't that something? If you look, the sneakers even have treads on it. And it's signed SOM. And I don't have any idea who SOM is. But someone clever, someone really funny. So I'll run over there and take a look at it. Ian isn't posting the one. I begged him to hang off the bridge so it'd be Ian and the baby, ceramic baby, both hanging together. But he did it. That's my thumb. So in any case, there's times when, think people just do something and add it to the environment, and it's so delightful and wonderful. And then there's other things that, we gotta, if sometimes you step up the game and it becomes a good thing. And so the other question I had was about what bringing up the issue of how do you do like brush trimming and cleanup in those zones that are in between State DOT, New Haven land, and the MTA and all of that. And there's a lot of that, like on Route 34 at Church Street South, where the brush gets so overgrown that you can't see traffic if you're a pedestrian or bicyclist walking. And then all around the State Street station, there's problems with brush and garbage, and in the winter, keeping the bridges clean of snow. And I'm actually wondering if it could be because when you have three different parties and they all say it's someone else's business, and the state stops on State Street, MTA will do one half of the bridge and not the other, whether some sort of agreement could happen that all three of those entities put money, let's say, over to Tambourine Special Service District. They come up with a proportional relationship about what they own and what it should cost. And we have one entity that's responsible for cleaning all of it up. So I just want to throw that out as an idea. I see Mr. Brown. So that's all I have for now.
Thanks, Astrid. Mr. Kozlowski. Oh,
No,
Mr.
I
Burton.
apologize. My wife just walked back in, and I was trying to let her know I was in a meeting.
Been there. All right, Mr. Kozlowski.
Arthur, there seems to be a sporadic dump spot on the corner of Chestnut and Franklin on both sides of the street. I think sometimes people who take their stuff out of U-Haul decide that they can just leave stuff on the sidewalk. But some of it's large. We had a sofa dropped off on the corner a couple of weeks ago. And it sometimes migrates down Franklin Street towards the restaurant area. And so I just hope you can swing by and check that out. Another issue is 112 Worcester Street, which is a building project that has dragged on for, I don't know, about 3 years now. And we've complained before about the trash in the parking lot in between my building and Sage Arts. And they moved some of the stuff, but they still left a bunch of debris hanging around. They don't seem to be working on the job site on a regular thing. So there are dumpsters that are full. There's debris all over the back of the parking lot and materials just hanging there. And nobody seems to be on the work site anymore. So if that can be addressed, that would be good.
112 Chapel Street, you said?
Yeah, it's the old Independent Club.
Okay.
Worcester, 112 Worcester.
Worcester.
Worcester, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, yeah, it's funny you said about Chestnut. I had to leave a door knocker with that property on the corner of Franklin Chapel. I noticed there was a little bit of trash, but the overgrowth was out of control. So when I do a reinspection on that, I'll look in that area.
All right.
And definitely monitor that. If that's a hotspot, I'll definitely keep that on my radar.
Okay, I got a couple other items here too.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
U-Haul keeps signage on the sidewalk at their front gate. We've asked them to move it a couple of times with Carmen when she was working this area. And they did, but now they moved their signage back out onto the sidewalk, right at their front gate to their parking lot. And the second item also relates to U-Haul. And that's that we seem to have an inordinate amount of lost citizens coming down the street for the last 4 or 5 months. A lot of out-of-state people. I guess they're looking for Worcester Street or something. But we have a speeding problem with them racing down a dead-end street. And now U-Haul has now compounded that by parking their trucks in front of the driveway at the end of the street that the public was using to turn around in order to come out of the street. And they would go through U-Haul's parking lot. Now they park their trucks there so nobody can access their property, which forms a real trouble spot with people speeding down the street. And sometimes it's 2 and 3 cars. And then all of a sudden they got nowhere to go. And at the end of the street, it turns into a knot of cars trying to back up against each other. Plus I almost got hit the other day by some out-of-state person who didn't even know it was a dead-end street and came speeding down. And this is not a one-time thing. It's happened a couple of times. So I don't know who to complain to unless traffic and parking or the lieutenant. But I just thought I'd throw that out there so you know what the tenor of the neighborhood is.
Yeah, no problem, Tone. I'm gonna put my number in the chat and maybe we could
Good.
communicate tomorrow so we could go over further details on these issues and see what I could do in my capacity to try and assist.
All right.
And whoever we have to collaborate with to try and research and try and address those issues, okay?
Yep. Thanks, Arthur.
No problem.
Thanks, Tony. Just to back up, I've been texting with Arthur over the last couple days and using C-Click Fix as well, and things have been getting done pretty quickly. So I recommend that everybody do the same. Mona?
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I have a whole lot of things that are going on, and many of them are related to the dirt and blight and so forth. 873 Grand, for example, I have found people using as a toilet again on a very regular basis. There's brawls there regularly in the morning. And all kinds of problems like that, which leads me to another issue, which is that we FOIA'd LCI for some further information about what they're doing regarding the properties that we were discussing on Grand Avenue last week, and we have yet to hear anything from that. And we kind of feel that it's time sensitive. So I was wondering if you had any knowledge as to when we might receive the information. And apropos to that, I have a very specific question, which I raised last week, which has not yet been addressed. And I'm really wondering if there are guidelines in the city that people, or let's say good behavior guidelines of some sort that would indicate that players who have been difficult in the past, again, I'll bring up the foreclosure issue on I think it's 873. I'm sorry, I have guests who suddenly arrived, so I'm a little bit discombobulated. And also there's liens against that property. And I'm wondering what this LCI's position is in terms of those situations are. And then that would lead into zoning and city plan and building department, whether or not people who are actually damaging our neighborhood should be awarded any permissions to get any kinds of building permits even, or even a demolition permit, which that same owner has gotten. I know that it's been denied that it's the same owner, but I've checked the records and I'm fairly certain I have good ground to stand on.
I think the question there, Mona, if I can interpret, is a question for Arthur about the status of the
Yeah,
lien.
so Mona, I do apologize for being relatively new in regards to the situation, but I think you'll have a better chance of discussing that with my supervisor, Frank Diamore. So I don't know if you want to contact him through email or his phone. I could put that in chat if you want, but he'll definitely have more knowledge about that matter than I would.
Well, are you aware that there is an order for foreclosure on 873?
Yeah, I somewhat have an idea, but like I said, Frank would definitely have more knowledge about this matter than I would. So I would definitely follow up with him in regards to that.
Right, I'm regularly in touch with him. It's just that we're not really getting any exact information because I don't know exactly why, but I hope that perhaps you might help move forward that FOIA request that we made, because it is all relevant information, and that's certainly, if that's in the record, then that's a really important thing for all the departments to be able to take a look at in the process of making judgments about any builder or developer or person wishing to develop anything in the neighborhood, even if it's a house, if that house has been derelict for years and years and years, purposefully even or not, you know, and there's liens on it or foreclosures on it, and that's where LCI comes in. Should they be able to continue development?
All right, and I know that I'm new with this matter, but I will follow up with Frank and see what we could discuss in regards to this matter.
Okay, and I have one more suggestion. I too have been very remiss in getting information to you regarding some of the problems that have been in the neighborhood. The Fiesta down on Hamilton Street near Vendome is heard all the way up here on Lyon Street, and I took my bike around and it's heard on Jefferson Street and different parts of Worcester Square, depending upon the acoustics. And it usually goes on Sunday. This past Sunday, it was not going on, but this is something that's been going on for years. That's been extremely agitating, and we have had people working on that a long time. And I sent some information over to quite a number of people, wondering how even that can happen during COVID. And I have not heard anything about that. And I will send you a list of some of the debris and problem areas that need cleaning up that I've noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever information and issues you could bring to my attention, please, and I could definitely look into that for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mona. Just a couple things on that. One, I would encourage folks who have any sort of noise complaint, especially if they're, you know, on odd hours or on the weekends. I think, you know, this is one of the things that we've figured out is there's only one body that can enforce a noise complaint in this city, and that's the police. So I think calling the non-emergency number is the only way to actually have action taken on that. Not the ideal solution, I know, but it is currently the only solution facing our city. I think it is something that we're talking about the other, whether that can be a different organization or a different agency that does that enforcement. But currently, the only city employees empowered to enforce that are the police, and they're the ones with the noise meters. Anstrus, and then I'm actually going to circle back to the Grand Ave project in our community updates.
Yeah, it's to follow up on what Mona has said. I think that something that, you know, maybe it just kind of as a logic model, if a community asks for basic documents about the history of a project and the owner and outstanding fines and liens and issues with it, and is told they can't find the documents and it'll take a while. In a certain way, all of those exact same documents should be in front of every person inside the city, whatever the department, economic development, LCI, or city plan, to understand what the whole picture of the site is and whether they're starting, if all of the past issues have been settled, and if you're starting from a clean slate. I think it isn't that if you've been, let's say, just remiss, to make it as, you know, kind of small as possible, just remiss in dealing with, let's say, fines levied against you in the past. It doesn't mean that if you've settled everything and the slate is clean, that you can't come back. But I think we need to see exactly what the real situation is in order to move forward and hope that all those things are all settled out. So if you can't find it for the public and it isn't in front of it, easily available to every department of cognizance, I don't know how you can come to the community and say, please review this plan and accept it or reject it. That's all I'd like to add. Thank you.
Thanks, Anstrus. Any further questions for LCI? Well, seeing none, I saw Arthur drop his phone number in the chat. Again, it's natalino@newhavenct.gov. He's incredibly responsive and on top of the C-click fix. So use any of those ways, you'll get a response. So we're now entering, or so we've so I'm sorry about that. Nope, we have aldermanic reports really quickly. We're going to go in numerical order. So Alder Sabin, you're up first.
Thanks, Ian. Great to see everyone here. I'm going to be quick because I think I have to run at 7. I think maybe Alder Roth is as well. And Alder Roth has some updates that I'm going to leave out of my update report. But I just wanted to mention that the youth committee of the board and the education committee are both going to be meeting, having a joint meeting on Wednesday, August 25th at 6 p.m. To talk about school reopening and safety protocols and procedures that'll be in place there. So the link will be posted for that meeting soon. And it'd be great if any of you have any thoughts or concerns, you can reach out to me or show up at the meeting to express those concerns and ask questions. So I think that'll be a good opportunity. And then speaking of safety, obviously, I think since our last meeting, the mayor issued an executive order saying that we should all be wearing masks inside if we hadn't been already. And so just wanted to mention that and hope everybody is staying safe. Then I also wanted to mention that the Safe Streets group is going to be having a meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. I will put the link for that in the chat. They'll be talking about bike and pedestrian safety advocacy, especially important this fall because the Safe Routes for All plan is coming out in September, looks like, and that'll be another opportunity for us to have a citywide conversation about bike and pedestrian safety that hopefully will move us forward in building safer streets. And speaking of that, this is a little bit farther down the line, but the Safe Routes for All plan will be announced on September 29th at 6 p.m. in Scantlebury Park. So if you're interested in that, please come out. And then the last thing is, I think I wasn't able to make our last meeting, but I think that my report about the sinkhole did get passed along. The sinkhole has been repaired, as you've probably seen if you go along College Street. So that is exciting, and hopefully we won't have any more issues like that soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Sabin. Alder Rodriguez, can I ask, do you have to leave at 7, or would you be okay with ceding your time to Alder Roth and then switching that around?
I can stay a few extra minutes, so we can stick in numerical order. That's just fine. Thanks. So.
Wonderful.
No, Alder Roth, that's fine. I could stick on for a bit, so go right ahead. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, sure. First, I do want to say that Lieutenant Marr a little bit underplayed that he had something to do with his wife. His wife's like about to have a baby. They had to go to the hospital last night. So fingers crossed that all will happen soon. That's exciting. So I just want to mention that. And last night, the CSEP committee, City Services and Environmental Policy, had a hearing where we talked about the elections. I think ward people probably know this, but just because I have gotten some emails from people who didn't realize, the only ward that has a primary is Ward 20. So no folks from downtown Worcester Square will, but we did talk about also absentee ballots, and based on what was passed by the state in June, anyone can request an absentee ballot for reasons of COVID if there's concerns about going to vote in person. And unlike last year, it won't get sent to you, but you can go online or go in person to request the ballot and can use the drop boxes. They are all going to be at 200 Orange Street. I will say I'm disappointed that there cannot be one move to Ward 20 for the primary, since that's the only primary. But so I wanted to mention that. Something that may be of interest to people in this meeting on Tuesday, August 31st, the Alder Public Safety Committee is having a hearing about community management teams. This was some colleagues on the Board of Alders requested this, and the language it says is to discuss the structure, responsibilities, and bylaws of community management teams. I don't know exactly kind of how it will, kind of what will be focused on, but I do recommend that people who have an interest in community management teams, I think it will be a good opportunity to have a conversation citywide about how they're working. A few other updates. Actually, the night before, on August 30th, the Finance Committee is having a meeting about the Tweed Airport deal, and that may be of interest to folks. I know that had been on our agenda. And just one other thing, Finance Committee related. Actually, this was good news. Sort of at the end of May, the projected deficit for last fiscal year was like $17.8 million, and by the end of June, which is the end of the fiscal year, was down to 9.3 million. It actually will take a little bit more time to settle out because they still are sort of dealing with some paperwork, and the budget director actually thinks it will get a little lower. And one reason, obviously it's good, but particularly it's good because the Board of Alders voted to use some of the American Rescue Plan funding to kind of cover whatever that deficit is. So the lower that number is, the more there is to go to other programs. And as I think Ian talked about tonight, is one of the big meetings about kind of how should the city sort of aspirationally be spending this money. I'll just mention a couple other things. One other, and this actually was before the Finance Committee as well, the mayor has proposed a new department called the Department of Community Resilience. And I think addressing the fact that so many of our issues, I mean, it sort of harkens back to what Steve said, tied to homelessness and addiction and I should say substance use disorder and mental health problems, and sort of to reorganize. The idea is that the administration's present to sort of reorganize the structure of that, and also a proposal to create 4 new positions, and then to use $8 million of American Rescue Plan funding for that. I think it did pass the Finance Committee. I think there's been requests for some more information about exactly what these 4 positions would be doing. And so I know I look forward to trying to get a little more information to just kind of think through, is this, I completely agree that we should be spending $8 million addressing these issues, which are so important, but to make sure kind of this is the best framework to be spending it. And I'll let my colleagues, I know there's a couple things also about affordable housing, but I'll defer to my colleagues if they wanna, those might be things they wanna reference, because they might be, I'll just leave a few more things. Thanks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Alder Roth? I know she has 7 o'clock, so. Seeing none, Alder Rodriguez.
Thank you, Ian. So definitely I echo everything my colleagues said. We have many, many meetings which they announced. One of the things, and I'm looking just to make sure that it is still set, the Education Committee will be held in person. So if things change, I will definitely make everyone aware, but it does not look like it is on Zoom. That one will be, I'm reading again just to make sure, because last minute changes can happen. So it looks like we are still in person, and all the other meetings that my colleagues mentioned will definitely be on Zoom. So stay tuned for that in the event that it's changed to Zoom and everybody can join. If not, it'll be at City Hall. Unless anybody else has seen, my colleagues have seen anything different. Misty just sent out again an agenda, and it looks like we'll be in person. Also coming soon with a date will be a meeting that we will be having with the Hill South management team and the Hill North, whatever management team wants to join, and also downtown Worcester Square. So we will have an opportunity to speak together as a community, to hear everyone as a community. Everyone is interested in the, yes, it passed BZA, it passed the Board of Zoning, and it will be going back to City Plan Commission once the design is ready by the developer, Darren Said, but we're going to take the opportunity to come together so everyone has an opportunity to ask a question. Once we schedule the meeting, I ask that we get questions. Ian, if you can be the point person for that. If questions in the community, if anyone in the community has questions, send them over to Ian so that once we set up the meeting, we can have a hearty discussion, one that we can get as many questions answered that evening without being held up for 3 to 4 hours asking the same questions. So again, we look forward to getting the questions ahead of time so we can have a healthy, great community engagement. And so not just saying, hey, I need this question answered, let's come back to the table. Let's try to do that as efficiently and positive as possible so that we can get a happy end result with this. Okay, so that's my report, and I may be running as well to another meeting. And I look forward to seeing everybody. We'll keep you posted in regards to the community management meeting. And as far as the developers' questions, we definitely are going to handle all those questions during that meeting. So we'll wait to hear what date. I'm checking the calendar so we could all jump on board. Thank you. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Alder Rodriguez. Just to clarify, Alder Rodriguez is talking about the Epimony project on Fair Street. Epimony was had requested time through Kathleen Krolek on tonight's meeting and pulled off to set this meeting with the Hill South team. As soon as we get that information, we'll pass it along to everybody. Yes, Alder Rodriguez, I'd be happy to collect those questions. So if anybody has questions, please email them to me, ianmdunn@gmail.com.
Thank you, Ian, for all that. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. I see a hand up from Anstress. Anstress, are you there?
There might be some utility having this meeting before the city plan site plan review, but I think it's important for everyone to understand that site plan review is not a deliberative process at all. And once something has gotten its approval from BZA, it basically changes the laws and regulations to allow anything that the developer has gotten approval of to happen, and you can't change it. There's very little that's of substance that can be influenced by the city plan, site plan review. And the whole point of this management team asking for the BZA to reopen the meeting was so that the things of substance about open space and its quality, traffic planning, affordable housing, all these things that are of enormous interest and importance to the community. The only point in time to actually be able to raise those questions and make a difference was at BZA. And this was set up in such a way to make it impossible to do that. And so this has been a very twisted process. There's multiple ways that our due process rights have been severely violated. And, bringing, whatever it means to bring the community together after the community has been completely, totally disrespected. I'm really at a loss about that. And I just want to say that very clearly to everyone, that it's in most ways really, truly unacceptable and deeply tragic.
Thank you for that answer. Anybody have any further questions? If not, Elder Cupo / my wife, for people who don't know, often we refer to each other as as colleagues. It's pretty silly. We live in the same house. Has her hands full at the moment, so expect her update in the minutes, but it sounds like everybody else covered it. So that concludes our general city report part of the meeting. We had hoped to see Alex Guzne, Ward 1 candidate for Alder tonight. He is down with a cold and will come back next month to introduce himself. So we're looking forward to that. But I do want to take a minute here just to update some folks, especially our Lion Street residents, about the Grand Avenue project. So I got an email So two things here. One, I've learned more in the last couple months about property rights than I ever really wanted to know. Property rights are the absolute top protected right in our country over civil rights, over human rights, property rights. Now I know that. So I think when we think about zoning, when we think about these things, when we think about, when I hear these proposals and these ideas for how do we talk about people in our developers or landowners or landlords who haven't behaved well in the past, there's no legal apparatus to make that to take that into consideration. Not yet. If you want there to be, get involved, run for office. That's how it works. So as to the Grand Avenue development, I got an email from Attorney Tracton, who's also here tonight. Just give me an update on the projects at 873 well, let's just call it the Ungers building. So his message, and this is slightly reconfigured for speech. The owner is reconsidering the project and is considering the project for something that does not require zoning relief. So it would be built as of right. I think the unfortunate part about that is this may necessitate the full demolition of the building, moving away from an adaptive reuse to something that could max out the building and build something even larger than the proposal that we saw. If this goes through a process which avoids the zoning review and it's built as of right, there will be less bureaucratic places for community members to speak about it. And that's just the way the process works. I think the undercurrent of that is we have a interesting situation in our city where we have a very outdated zoning ordinance, right? I think we all know that. Inclusionary zoning and a new zoning overhaul is something that I believe our Board of Alders and a bunch of other people are looking at very closely. And until we update our zoning code to reflect the city that we live in currently, we're going to kind of keep stumbling through these issues. So what is good to hear is that the developer is going to come back to the management team with their new proposal after inclusionary zoning passes. So I think we can expect to see a new proposal from the developers of the Grand Avenue project when that happens. Now this is what I'm being told currently. That could change, but I just wanted to keep everybody up to date there. So especially for Ms. Reeder and Ms. Berman and other folks on Lion Street, it does seem like that project that we saw proposed last month is currently on hold, and I would invite the developer to come to us, in the brainstorm phase if they're talking about a new thing, or if they want to set up that small community group. I'd still be very happy to help broadcast that and make sure people know that's happening. Questions on that, Anstress?
Well, yeah, the attorney that's represented that developer is here tonight, and I'm glad that he's allowed our chair to paraphrase the letter that we got, but I'm wondering if he would offer a comment. I'm guessing that if he's waiting for after inclusionary zoning's passage, it may be that the FAR on Grand Avenue now does not allow very big buildings for the sites. And are they looking to use what might be a 25% increase if you have a certain amount of affordable housing? Is that what he is saying in the note to Ian? Mr. Tracton, would you comment on that?
Sure, I really don't want to make a comment about this currently, but all options are on the table, and I think there are just too many moving pieces currently to give any prediction of what the next iteration of the plan is going to look like.
Yeah.
but most likely it will be an as of right build with less opportunity for public input.
Well, all I would say is that's your choice. There's things like zoning relief that require public hearings. But as we know, even at a zoning hearing, it's not so much a place, you can say you're for or against a certain application. And it's really not so much, you can speak, but it isn't really public input about a project. So what I would recommend is that you real public input starts way in advance of developing an actual application, and that you do what you offered and come and meet with neighbors that would like to talk to you about it. That's real public input. Start at that very earliest moment. You may get some ideas that you've not considered that actually would be great ideas for you. So I try to approach it with that spirit. And thanks so much for being here tonight.
So thank you, Answers. And I'm always open to good ideas from wherever they may come. So, but I have clients who have different approaches to development. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But thank you for being willing to, well, thank you, Ian, for being willing to put everybody together. And thank you, Answers, for your suggestions.
Yeah, thank you, Answers, and thank you, Attorney Tracton. Mona, I see a question. Mona, you're on mute. You're still muted.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know, perhaps Answers might be able to help me out with this, or Ben, I don't know who is most qualified here. But once a building is torn down, doesn't it have to still meet all of the zoning that exists then in order to be as of right, every aspect of it, and anything that deviates again would be something that would have to get a variance? Because those buildings are very old and not in good shape. I'm sorry.
No, so I don't want to just get into speculation about what's going to be, what the proposal is going to be. Currently, if we pulled back some of the upper stories away from the Lion Street area, we could have a pretty much as of right development. I'm not sure if that's the direction we're going to be going in, or a complete demolition, but we'll see. We're probably talking about 3 or 4 months before we're firmly into a new plan. Thank
Excuse
you.
me, Ian.
ahead,
You didn't address the question. The question is, and that's why I thought maybe Anstres or somebody else might also be able to help, is that once somebody demolishes a structure, whatever zoning is in law at that particular time is what they have to conform to. Is that not correct?
I think let me try this. I think to try to parse out what might be implied in the question. Right now, I think that there's non-conforming aspects of this building, particularly the rear lot areas. And if that building was gone, a new plan couldn't just rebuild the things that were non-conforming. Is that what you mean, Mona? You just have to start, you're on a clean slate, and the only thing that's going to influence any new development is exactly the zoning that's in place.
That's exactly what I mean. So,
yeah.
And one of the issues that
non-conformity doesn't roll forward after it's gone.
Right. So as I understand it, one of the issues that had been discussed at the, when 873 was at BZA. The first time was not having commercial on the ground level. So it would have to revert to that as I understand it. Is that correct?
If I can try to answer that, and I won't be able to answer it correctly, but here's my understanding. The zoning is the zoning. Currently, the building is very old, so it probably isn't compliant with the current zoning. If it gets demolished, the new building could be compliant, it could not be compliant. If it's not compliant, it has to go through the BZA for a variance or a special exception or whatever it is. That'll trigger whatever appropriate public hearing or not would be required. But if the developer chose to build something that was compliant with zoning as it exists currently, they would be able to do so. And that's what as of right means there, is that if it's compliant, it gets built. If it's not compliant, it goes through the BZA for the appropriate variances. What I think is, something that I will commend and continue to commend as any developer continues to come out to the management teams or any other appropriate public forum and seek public input before seeking those administrative approvals. So Mona, I think it's a complicated question and it really depends on what exactly the proposal is. But it is good to hear currently that the developer is suggesting that they're going to come back in 3 to 4 months with that proposal. Does that sound right? Cool. All right, so moving along, unless there's any other questions on that. Seeing none. Oh man, I'm turning into the person who says moving along. I'm sorry, everybody. But hey, it happens. Is anybody here from 10,000 Hawks? Or does anybody have a hawk? No. All right, so 10,000 Hawks. Dr. Brown?
We have a family of great horned owls outside of our house, so we see them pretty much every morning. So well, hawks every now and then, but we definitely see the owls regularly.
I'll take them. That's awesome. I love a good great horned owl. Well, 10,000 Hawks was an advocacy group formed to talk about the Tweed expansion. I will reach back out to them and see if they're interested in coming out to the next meeting. But they are not here. So moving, oh man, I'm not going to say it. Next up, how about that, is back to Ben Tracton and Avi Mir to talk about 335 St. John Street. For folks, just give you a quick reminder, 335 St. John Street was the building that suffered the partial collapse over the past year. It's been a hot topic in our management team as we've talked about I think the conversation has ranged from what is the responsibility of landowners to maintain their buildings to a BZA hearing where I think that part of the conversation around it was they were seeking an approval to put an additional apartment in the basement, which was denied. I think it was denied based on the lack of a hardship, but part of that conversation revolved around the condition of the building. They're here today both to take questions and to just talk about the state of that construction. So I will let Mr. Mir and Mr. Tracton fire off on that and then invite questions.
So I wasn't at the BZA meeting, so I don't know the exact back and forth, but from what I understand, there was some talk and some facts that I felt, maybe me being here, I can clarify some for all. We purchased the house at 335 St. John's from an older gentleman by the name of George. I'm sure some of you may know him. He's been there for many years. We purchased that in December of 2018. That building has been, for the most part, occupied for about 18 months. There's been several improvements done to the exterior, the roof, the facade. Some water heaters were replaced. Some appliances were replaced. And I actually reached out to Ian myself just to let him know some of these facts, because I thought that some of what was spoken wasn't completely accurate. We have a lot of communications from all of our tenants of different complaints. None at all have anything to do with the structure or the side brick wall, not either from any of the insurance companies or the city or the building department until the call that I received from my office about a wall and bricks, which from the call, I didn't really quite understand what that meant. And when I got to the house, I saw the damaged wall. The building department was called. They, recommended or condemned any occupancy of the units. The tenants had to get put up. This is a Friday afternoon, mind you, and I'm observant. So it was a pretty hectic Friday afternoon for me. We got everybody put up in the, in whatever we had that we can actually give them. And then the process went of, trying to get it, first of all, figured out and rebuilt. Insurance was obviously contacted. The process on a good scenario takes many months to get, a plan done and then, assessments and get contractors and bids. And unfortunately, after a lot of back and forth, we got a letter of, we got a denial from the insurance company, something to the effect of a pre-existing issue in the building. And we are still fighting it. And it's currently, being litigated by attorneys. And it's really, it's limited. Immediately, we actually got engineers to design a plan of demolition and rebuilding. Even building permits were pulled at the time, but due to the just huge cost of it, we weren't in a position, we just couldn't really do much without the insurance company's help, which we expected would be coming, by the time we were ready to get rolling. So that really put a wrench in the wheels of getting things moving. And then, only starting the process of, finding an attorney and moving forward. And we're now, I don't know how many months later, and we're still dealing with that. The area was fenced off. Carmen of the LCI has been in contact with me many times. And we've worked together on different things. Fence fell at some point due to wind. Some garbage people that threw in the area had to get cleaned up. And what really actually surprised our structural engineer was the final collapse that happened, more recently, which really put us on high gear here. We worked very closely with the building department and the structural engineer. We hired a very reputable builder by name of Litchfield Builders, and they have been aggressively and pushing to rebuild the foundation and going up. I think, I'm sure many of you guys have been by there. You can see that the structure is fully up, and we're working forward, and we're making very, very good progress in these last few months to actually get that thing back up and running. And I think that very shortly we'll be able to walk by a nicely rebuilt building on St. John's. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for folks to know, I've dropped the City Squared parcel in the chat. So City Squared is the application that the city uses to like manage permits and stuff. So you can actually kind of watch the history of this. I have a question here. So the original notice of unsafe structure was in May 22nd of 2020. There was a reissue of that letter in September of 2020. And then back in July of this year, the building fell down, or the side of the building fell off. I think one of the major questions that we've had in this group throughout the past several meetings is it seems for us, you know, who may own a home, a single building, or you know, who are just used to being in a situation where we have to fix things and then go collect from insurance, that waiting to get to the insurance to pay out before starting repairs has been a question that's come up a couple times. And it might be worth, and maybe I'll just hand it back to you, of like, can you explain exactly why that's the case?
So I've never actually been in this situation. You know, I can't tell you what I would normally do, but what I could tell you is that if it was a repair that would have costed, you know, $20,000, we'd probably be able to get that done and then fight about it later. Over here, we were talking about a renovation of $250,000, which, you know, even with conservative reserves, you know, we were just not prepared for that. And also the, you know, the unknown of what you might, the breakthrough that might just come, you know, maybe some kind of a, you know, agreement, a settlement, or something, you know, that hanging, that possibility hanging in front of you just makes it, you know, that much more difficult. In addition, it's also very hard to borrow money for such a complicated situation, even from private lenders, which, you know, which was something that, you know, we looked into a few times, and people were just very uncomfortable to, you know, get involved. So I'm not sure what I could have, should have, would have done differently, but it just wasn't a very simple situation at any point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely sympathetic to the fact that this sounds like no one wants to buy a building and then have the wall fall off a couple of years later. That sounds like a real harsh situation to be in. I think that notwithstanding, it's one of the things that I think we've seen in the neighborhood and that we're going to continue to push on is that we want to continue to beautify our neighborhood. We want to make sure that, you know, buildings are taken care of. I live on Brown Street, and right across the street from me is a building that has like 60 liens on it because it's been in various states of tax foreclosure or blight. There's a ton of blight liens, there's a ton of tax foreclosure liens, and it's just not taken care of. And I think we want to figure out how to set a standard that we can point to and say that's how you should maintain a building. So, and I know that, you know, you're building more stuff in our neighborhood. The 98 Olive Street project seems to be well underway, and we want to work together and figure out how we grow as a community. So I don't mean this to be a interrogation so much as a listening session and a place for people to ask their questions and have answers about exactly what happened. I see Astris again. Sorry, but I hear your response there. Go ahead.
So firstly, I completely agree, and I'm happy that you're giving me this opportunity to communicate, you know, that, and I'll tell you that I do have other properties in and around this neighborhood, and you know, nobody's perfect, but I I think we do care very much to, yes, keep our properties to a high standard, and you know, sometimes some things, you know, just happen that you just can't you know, you can't predict or take any steps to avoid. But I think you know, I think I've shown in general that I do care, and I look forward to working forward and helping to beautify the neighborhood for ourselves and for everybody around us.
I appreciate that. Answers?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And, you know, I just want to second what Ian said. You know, the point isn't to, you know, pin you to the wall and interrogate you, but things fell so far out of order on this that it's important that we all understand things. I think one of the frustrations for us as neighbors and members of the management team was that we brought endless questions about this to LCI, and LCI wasn't able to come back to us with real answers about things. And all of us that walk around there, you know, we noticed for years the bowing of the wall, you know, that pre-existed before you bought it, and that it was getting worse and worse. And then, as you mentioned, bricks started falling out and you had to move your tenants out. And then, you know, went on, and finally the wall fell down. And, you know, it's probably going to cost more now to fix it than had you been able to fix it earlier on. And, you know, I'm wondering what your inspection report when you purchased the building had to say about it. If it didn't note that, it was a very serious oversight on the part of the inspector, because it was very, you know, clearly a problem that a lot of people noticed for a long time. But then the other thing just to keep in mind is, you know, one of the reasons that the management team at every meeting for months brought it up with our LCI specialist at the time, Carmen, was that it was clearly a dangerous situation for the people that were in it when they were still there. And then even once it was vacated, you didn't know which way the wall would fall. And it was clear it was going to bring down wires. The ones that it would catch were, you know, Comcast and Frontier wires, the lower wires, but it still had the potential of dragging a pole with it. So there were those things as clear dangers. And, you know, if someone was trespassing on the lot when it fell, that could be a problem, or a homeless person in the building that snuck in. So it was a dangerous situation, and things, we just weren't able to get it to move. So it's good that you're here. And I think that maybe a solution, or one solution in the future, is that we can reach out directly to you when there's something that's going on. And, you know, at this point you're here, you know, maybe you'll put your contact information into the chat, and that might be a big step forward for, you know, that we all can really help each other out.
So firstly, I'm very available. I think there's several people on this chat that even have my cell phone. I answer my phone.
Yep, that's good.
And I'm happy to communicate. I'm happy to do what I can do, you know, and, you know, I don't always know the answers, but I'm happy to tell everybody what I do know or what I do think. And I'm happy, you know, Elder Kupo and I have met several times, and I know some of the other people, and I'm happy to, you know, I'm available. I'm willing to give my email for if anybody would like to reach out to me. I'm here.
I guess the only other puzzle, it's like a historical question, is that we saw the plans that were approved by the building department for how to brace the building, and it had metal braces, a very secure way of doing it. But then that bracing was never put in place. And, I wonder if that had happened, if it would have been possible to prevent the total collapse. But that's hindsight. It may not be able to be something that can be answered, but that was one of the central questions we kept trying to get information about, why the approved plan for the bracing wasn't put in place. So let's figure out how to stay in touch. If you would drop your contact into chat, I don't have it, and that would be very, very good to stay in communication. And I really appreciate that you're here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Astrid. Anyone else?
Yeah, I am. 77 Gmail.
Anyone else? Mr. Mayor, I just have one last question for you. It's something that I haven't been able to figure out. So the plans that Astrid are talking about, this was the big CMU wall and steel construction. It's very similar to, I don't know if everybody remembers when the J. Crew building got taken down on York Street. They had to build a similar thing because it was tied into the building next door. So they had to build a big concrete masonry unit wall and then a bunch of steel to hold that wall up, and then that kept that building from falling down. So a very similar set of plans were submitted to the city building department. I think it was in September of 2020. But the plans themselves were drawn up, and the date on the plan says May 27th, 2020. So it's 7 days after your first letter of violation. It seems like you went to an engineer to get plans drawn up to keep the building safe, but then it's over a year later, and then the wall falls off. So I'm having trouble matching what you're saying about how it was hard to know what was going to happen with engineering plans that say how you hold a building wall up.
So firstly, the plans with the steel, the steel was not meant to be permanent, and it was not meant to keep the brick wall up. It was meant to hold the rest of the structure while the brick could be taken safely down without the building collapsing. So it was a temporary shoring so that that sidewall can get taken down and then rebuilt up structurally. And those plans were generated immediately after, or shortly after, the initial, buckling, collapse of the partial wall, let's call it. In terms of if it was submitted for permits, I think it was submitted, unless somebody knows better than me. I thought it was submitted sometime shortly after it actually happened, but I may be wrong.
Well,
I was actually at the building with our current builder maybe a week before this actual collapse. So it wasn't a situation that was being ignored and neglected. It was something that, from my perspective, I was really just trying to figure out how to address it best. And I'll tell you from my conversations with this builder and others, the condition of the way the wall, taking down that wall, I think was a big challenge to begin with, even with the bracing. I mean, the collapse of the wall didn't happen at the top; it happened at the bottom, which means all the weight of all the rest of that brick, which is all compromised, it's compromised way at the bottom. And if anything goes wrong, and people are there working on it, that was a big challenge for them to begin with. And I had them come a couple times, and as recently as only a week before the thing actually came down. I met there, afterwards with our same structural engineer, who's also a very reputable structural engineer. And he was, also very, very shocked. The builder, when we were there just a week earlier, he told me, he's like, he'd be surprised how tough these walls are. I mean, this was something we did not expect to see, to hear about. So, so shortly after we were there. Um, I mean,
No,
I'm telling you what I know.
yeah. No, that's very helpful. And I think this is, another lesson I'm learning is that a little bit of information can be pretty bad, but the whole picture can be pretty good. Um, it's good to understand that. So these were plans that you had put in to repair the building, not to avoid or to shore up the building from collapsing. And I understand that these balloon frame buildings are very difficult to work on. So I think this is one of those situations where what we're finding out and what we're seeing right now is that communication is great. Sharing these struggles is really great too, because you can see just how difficult these old buildings can be. And if we could invite you back, or how about this? You have an open invite if you ever want to come back and give an update on what's going on and your progress, because I think it's something that I know for a fact when something falls down in the neighborhood, everybody goes on a high alert. That is what happens. That is what happened here. And as we start to put the pieces together, it's really good to be able to get the whole picture.
I'm happy to come back with a nice picture of a finished product.
I love that. That sounds great. All right. Now, any other further questions for Mr. Mayor, Mr. Tracton? Seeing none, let me reopen our open forum for one last set of questions. Mr. Weber, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is my first meeting, so I apologize for missing the open forum section. I'm a relatively recent resident. I love trying to walk and bike everywhere. Unfortunately, I have noticed kind of an alarming trend in Yale vehicles being parked on the sidewalks and in the bike lanes everywhere. Specifically, a pretty bad spot I would say is on High Street between Chapel and Elm. I can walk down there any day of the week, specifically even today during lunch, and there is a vehicle parked in the bike lane, blocking it, forcing cyclists to swerve into head-on traffic. I can understand maybe an out-of-town driver parking in the bike lane by mistake, but for such a prominent and long-standing institution in our city to consistently impede the safe access of pedestrians and cyclists on sidewalks and bike lanes, that have been adjacent to their property for many years, it's absolutely ridiculous. The word that comes to my mind when I see this behavior is that they're essentially littering their private vehicles all over our public streets and creating safety and accessibility hazards. So if you look at See Click Fix, you'll see many, many requests in this area for parking violations with pictures of Yale vehicles. I love See Click Fix. I think it's great for many things. It's not that great for parking enforcement because enforcement usually takes a few days to get out there, and by that time, the vehicle has been moved, and so they have to close the ticket and not issue a citation. So I'd like to find some sort of long-term solution, efficient solution for this. Maybe it's just directly talking to Yale about it. Maybe that will fix it. I don't know if this issue has been brought up in the past. I'd like to hear if the team has any potential solutions or opinions on this. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Weber. This is a good one. I'm going to drop in the chat Karen King, who's the New Haven Affairs contact. She often had come to this meeting for a while. She knows she's away this back half of August. I think a direct email to her would be good, and I will reach out to Ms. King and Yale to show up to the next management team meeting. But that being said, I worked at Yale for a long time and had a lot of interactions. I still work at Yale, but had a lot of interactions with the people that ran the traffic and parking thing, and they actually have a special deal with the city to pay their tickets because they get so many. So it's a kind of a funny disregard for and by funny I mean tragic, disregard for parking violation or parking rules downtown. Just today I saw a car pull up on the curb, plop down on the bike lane, and then I took a walk and walked by the Yale University League of American Cyclists plaque. It was a nice little combo. So let's get on this. All right, we got bike shop here. We're gonna get Yale here. I think Alder Roth, Alder Sabin are both excellent resources. Alder Morrison, who represents Ward 22, again, for a lot of the north part of campus. I'll follow up with you too.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any good ideas on this one? It's a really good point. No. I think the other thing here to do is you can call traffic and parking right now, and you can leave a voicemail. So you call traffic and parking, they're not in the office, you leave a voicemail, and they'll call you back. But I think I have found traffic and parking to be quite responsive when people complain. So it's a good thing to start doing. Answers? Answers is on mute. Lana?
Question for Adam. Adam, have you tried any of these things that have been suggested and found them, unsuccessful or unhelpful, just so we know that the things are being suggested are worthwhile or not?
I have not. I was unfamiliar with these avenues. The only thing I've used so far is SeeClickFix, which sometimes it results in a good turnout, but other times it just takes too long.
Answers?
Yep, so just to say what I put into the chat, maybe there's no one on phone, is the Yale Police Department has community relations people, and just like Karen King, we could invite one of them to the next meeting. And I think with police cars, to always put the number of the cruiser or its license plate in SeeClickFix is fair. It's a public vehicle. And if it's a private vehicle, I'd say write down the number and keep it. So if questions rise, if you see a frequent offender, in a way, it's too bad someone from the police department isn't here. I don't know the implications of posting a license plate on a private vehicle in SeeClickFix. We could even ask them about that. But a police cruiser is a whole different thing. It's an official car. And it's, either the badge number or the cruiser number is how you identify who's involved. So I think that that's absolutely reasonable and fair to make a record of on SeeClickFix.
Thanks, Answers. All right, so what we're going to do, we'll bring this up at our next executive board meeting of the management team. It's the first Monday of the month, and we'll come up with a letter that we'll send out to Yale asking them to come to speak to this. So next, show up to the third Tuesday next month, and hopefully we'll have a response. That's September 21st at 6. But until then, I'd say feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll drop my cell in the chat. Anybody else? Last points. See, look, I said we'd be done by 7. Haha. I'll learn one of these days not to promise things that I can't deliver. Nope. All right. Y'all have a great night, okay? Thank you so much. Take care.